Please rise for the passing of the colors and the singing of the national anthem by Rebecca Wiles.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Please be seated. So good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of the university community, I welcome you to the 2014 Spring Graduate School Commencement Ceremony. And we're pleased to have with us today representative from Virginia Tech's Board of Visitors. Board members are appointed by the governor, and Virginia Tech has been very fortunate to have a record of appointees who bring to this voluntary service a deep and genuine commitment to the university. And I'm honored to recognize these board members, and I would ask them to stand and we can recognize them when I've called all the names. First is the rector of our board, Mr. Michael Quillen, Mr. Cordell Falk, Dr. Tom Ryan, Mr. John Rokovich, and Mr. Dennis Tracy. We also have three representatives to the board, and I'd like to ask them to stand as well. Dr. Joe Marola, faculty rep to the board, Ms. Sue Teal, staff representative to the board, and Mr. Nick Warrington, our graduate student representative. So let's recognize them as well. I'm also pleased to introduce the deans of our colleges, and these are the individuals who have the immense responsibility for the academic and administrative direction of each college. And I'd like to ask them to stand as I go through the list. Dr. Karen DePaul, Vice President and Dean of Graduate Education. Dr. Rosemary Blisner, Associate Dean of the Graduate School. Dr. Mohammed Hodge, Associate Dean of the Graduate School. Dr. Alan Grant, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Professor Jack Davis, Dean of the College of Architecture and Urban Studies. Dr. Robert Sumikrest, Dean of the Pamplin College of Business. Dr. Richard Benson, Dean of the College of Engineering. Dr. Joan Hurt, Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences. Dr. Paul Winnestorfer, Dean of the College of Natural Resources and the Environment. Dr. Lainam Chang, Dean of the College of Science. And Dr. Cyril Clark, Dean of the Virginia Maryland Regional College of Veterinary Medicine. Let's recognize these folks. Thank you. And I'd also like to recognize the senior members of the administration who have joined us on stage today. First is Dr. Mark McNamee, our Senior Vice President and Provost. Dr. Elizabeth Flanagan, Vice President for Development and University Relations. Mr. Dwight Shelton, Vice President for Finance and Chief Financial Officer. Dr. William Lewis, Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion. And Dr. Steve McKnight, Vice President for the National Capital Region. Dr. Scott Midkiff, Vice President for Information Technology. Dr. Patricia Perillo, Vice President for Student Affairs. Dr. Tom Tiller, Vice President for Alumni Relations. Dr. Robert Walters, Vice President for Research. And Dr. Sherwood Wilson, Vice President for Administration. So let's recognize these folks. Also on stage are Dr. Sarah Carpenter, the Commencement Marshal, Mrs. Andrea Tiwari, the Graduate Student Marshal, Mr. Jordan A. Booker, Graduate Honor System Chief Justice, Mr. Mordecai Harvey, Vice President of the Graduate Student Assembly, Ms. Shunia Lee, the Graduate Student Speaker, and Ms. Rebecca Wiles, the vocalist for the music department. So let's recognize them as well. Thank you all. Now this afternoon we are pleased to recognize and to celebrate with our graduate students. So we're really here to honor you, and this ceremony signifies a tremendous achievement and a celebration of your talents and skills and your hard work. And we look forward with great anticipation to learning of your continued progress and of your future accomplishments. And I'm sure that you're going to continue to display your Hokie spirit and always be a part of this very special Virginia Tech community. As you know, the degrees that you're about to receive are the highest that students may earn. It's also important to note that these students would not have achieved these goals without the teaching and the guidance of the faculty. So I'd like to ask the faculty who are here to stand up and be recognized. All of us, please. Thank you. There are many faculty and staff members who've worked tirelessly to make this commencement a celebratory event. Many are serving as ushers and marshals today, and have taken on additional administrative assignments to support this special occasion, and I want to thank each of you. Now, behind each graduate student is a supporting cast of family and community members, and I'd like the families of our graduate students to stand as well, please. Thank you all very much. As you know, graduate students are extremely important to the university's research and scholarship mission. This university offers graduate degrees in 89 master's and 70 doctoral programs in 8 colleges, and its student body represents nearly 50 states and 120 nations. During the spring semester, 1,446 students earned advanced degrees, including 1,047 master's, 13 education specialists, 9 educational doctorates, and 268 PhD degrees, in addition to 99 advanced graduate certificates. We have approximately 646 graduate students participating today. At this time, it's my pleasure and privilege to present Virginia Tech's Senior Vice President and Provost, Dr. Mark McNamee, who will introduce our graduation speaker today. Dr. McNamee.
It's my great pleasure to introduce our graduate student speaker, Ms. Shanita Lee. Ms. Lee is receiving her doctorate today in the field of genetics, bioinformatics, and computational biology. As a graduate ambassador and a diversity scholar, she has positively impacted the lives of countless graduate students. Among other roles, she served as president of the Black Graduate Student Organization for 2 years, president of Alpha Epsilon Lambda, a leadership honor society for graduate students. In 2013, she was named the Graduate Woman of the Year. Shanita is a natural leader, problem solver, and champion of good causes, great and small. Her exemplary work ethic and unwavering positive attitude is cited by all who have worked with her. Upon graduation, Shanita is moving to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill for a 3-year postdoctoral research and teaching position. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shanita Lee.
Good afternoon. Woo. Back up, I'm loud. Okay, on behalf of the graduating class, I would like to thank President Charles Steger, Provost Mark McNamee, Dean Karen DePaul, the Board of Visitors, faculty and staff members, family, and friends for joining us in this special occasion. Special congratulations to all of the graduates for completion of your academic and professional journey here at Virginia Tech, and best wishes on all of your future endeavors. It is with great pleasure that I speak to you all today. While reflecting on the past 5 years, several words came to mind, such as excitement, dedication, passion, writer's block, and even at times, exhaustion. But all of us persevered and continued the race. My race began in 2009 when I decided to pursue my PhD in genetics, bioinformatics, and computational biology. I became accustomed to the confusion of what that really meant, the occasional head nod, and my personal favorite, oh yeah, so it's sort of like insert incorrect comparison here. But what I learned is although our family and friends may or may not understand exactly what we do or our career aspirations, they are extremely proud of our accomplishments and a constant motivational force in our lives. For me, my time at Virginia Tech was by far the best time of my life. I found a university willing to support new programs and initiatives and advancing this motto, ut prosim. The Latin phrase ut prosim means that I may serve. I learned how to selflessly give and how to serve the graduate community and the community at large. I challenge each of you to reflect on service and how you can apply your skills, your research, and other talents to truly make a difference in someone's life. Mahatma Gandhi once said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Have a life with meaning. discover your purpose and how you want to impact the world. Reflecting on my experiences, I realized I had a hokey transformation. Yes, I am coining this term for this speech, but its definition is a change in spirit while at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University for a time period greater than or equal to 1 year. I transformed myself from a Southern gal who was uncertain of how I would use my love for mathematics into a confident computational biologist, ready to take on the world. Graduate school was the optimal time to discover who I am and develop professionally, socially, and educationally. We all have many people to thank, especially our patient and loving advisors. But this transformation involves so many other people. During my hokey transformation, I utilized strength I never knew I encompassed to help me overcome any struggle in my life. Self-discovery is a beautiful experience, and as you face future and unknown challenges, you can always rely on your inner hokey. Fellow graduates, continue to grow, transform, and embody the spirit of versatility as we paint the world as maroon and orange butterflies. I learned so many valuable lessons during my time here at Virginia Tech, and I would like to share them with you to inspire you from this day forward. Number one, always plan and prepare. Plans provide a roadmap of where you want to go, and preparation is the compass to guide you there. Don't limit yourself on what you can or cannot do. The sky is truly the limit. Number two, impress and express. As you go out into the workforce, remember to stay true to who you are and simultaneously don't dim your value when interacting with others. The spirit you project is reflective of your heart, so always stay positive. And lastly, number three, learning is ongoing. Although we are receiving our degrees today, the process of learning is a never-ending process. So never stop learning or lose thirst to acquire more knowledge. So finally, on behalf of all of the graduates, we would like to thank our family for the continued support and being our #1 fans over the years, our advisors and advising committee for training us as young researchers and working tirelessly to ensure our success, our friends for accepting time zone differences and taking advantage of advanced technology, and all other supporters who helped us on this journey. Congratulations again to the 2014 graduate class of Virginia Tech. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharnita, and good luck with the next phase of your education. Today I have the pleasure to introduce Ms. Claire Guthrie Castaneda. Ms. Castaneda became the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Virginia in 2012, following a distinguished career as an attorney working in legal and government relations, and an equally distinguished career as private consultant focused on immigration policy, violence against women, LGBT rights, and equal economic opportunity. For nearly 20 years, she served in the Virginia Attorney General's office and was the first woman to serve as Virginia's Chief Deputy Attorney General. In this capacity, she argued cases in both the U.S. and the Virginia Supreme Courts. After leaving this office, Ms. Castaneda became a senior advisor to the leadership of the Virginia General Assembly, and among her positions there, she was Chief of Staff and Counsel to the Speaker of the House Democratic Caucus, the House Courts of Justice Committee, the House Committee on Finance, and the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. Throughout her career, her legal and advocacy work has led to a long list of awards. For her entire work in higher education, the National Association of College and University Attorneys named her as one of its first 2 fellows, and the Richmond YWCA named her Lawyer of the Year. Her awards range from the Virginia Public Policy Advocate of the Year to last year's Bernard Mays Award from the University of Virginia, which is where she earned her law degree in 1974. In 2010, Virginia Lawyers Weekly named her one of Virginia's 50 top women of influence. Please welcome Ms. Claire Castaneda.
Thank you so much. Wow, just wow. This is great. Good afternoon. Are you all having a good time yet? Yeah? No? President Steger, Provost McNamee, Vice President DePaul, members of the Board of Visitors, distinguished faculty and administrators and guests, family of graduates, friends of graduates, and most importantly, graduates. I'm deeply honored to be here today to celebrate the work and accomplishments of all those receiving graduate degrees and to mark President Steger's last commencement as your president. Joseph Campbell has said that we must be willing to get rid of the life we planned so we can have the life that's waiting for us. As an Army brat who moved roughly every 4 years when I was growing up, for me, that means that since change is inevitable, one needs to be prepared to leave the comfort of the present in order to truly live the future. 2 years ago, when most of my friends and contemporaries were graduating into retirement, I left the comfort of my own firm, being my own boss, defining my own time and workload, for the challenge of leading the Virginia affiliate of the American Civil Liberties Union. I'm not sure exactly what I had planned at that time, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't this. And what I expected I thought I'd be doing at this point in my life wasn't doing this. And yet everything and everyone told me it was exactly the right thing to do. The universe and my friends were right. It has been exactly the life that was waiting for me. And the last 2 years of my life have been among the most professionally rewarding. Both you as graduates and President Steger will leave Virginia Tech soon with plans for your lives, plans that make sense given what you know today, plans that may make no sense a year from now or even a month from now. You are entering a world where technology has become an incredibly powerful accelerant to change, and the growth in the sum total of all human knowledge has become exponential. A friend who was a tenured professor of chemistry at Princeton in the late 70s once told me that he saw technology change his profession from one where a single physical chemistry experiment might take years or a career to complete to one in which the same knowledge can literally be gained in seconds. In my own legal career, I've seen the span of legal subjects over which I could claim competency shrink significantly with each decade. I started my career as a general practice lawyer with a special set of clients. Those clients were colleges and universities, and at one point, Virginia Tech was one of them. And I watched the breadth of my expertise contract as the knowledge required to maintain competency in each subject or area of law deepened. Whether you accept estimates that the sum total of all human knowledge now doubles in 1 to 3 years or 5 years, or whether you accept that by 2020 that doubling will take place every 75 days, one thing is clear. The velocity of change you will experience in your careers will be significant, regardless of your field, and the way you do your work, the plans you are making for your lives now, may be too limiting, too grand, or superseded by unexpected events. General Eric Shinseki, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, once advised his troops that if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. If you've been reading the news lately, you know that the General is facing significant challenges regarding the VA's provision of services to our veterans. It's clear that this isn't something for which he planned, but with which he must deal, and I'm sure he isn't feeling irrelevant right now. So in addition to accepting the fact that this graduation isn't the end of your education, as Ms. Lee pointed out, that learning truly is a lifelong process and a continuing necessity rather than a luxury, what can you do to position yourselves to be ready for the life that is waiting for you? You can take the spirit of the Virginia Tech motto, that I may serve, and the principles of community that make Virginia Tech strong together with you as you move beyond this place. You can value each person you meet and work with. You can respect and encourage open expression and civility. You can value diversity while affirming our common humanity. And you can take individual responsibility to end bias and discrimination. You can honor the ethical foundation of your education here by valuing your own integrity and developing a courageous conscience that will enable you to either be an exceptional leader or an exemplary follower. Integrity is like a muscle that needs to be trained and developed. Stephen Carter defines integrity in his book of the same name as requiring, first, a serious discernment of in which you develop and define your own sense of right and wrong. Second, a choice to act on the principles of right and wrong that you've defined. And third, and what Carter says is the most difficult, is the willingness to be open about your principles and state the reasons for your actions. That willingness to live your values openly is fundamental to what Robert Kelly calls in his book, The Power of Followership, a courageous conscience. Kelly says that a courageous conscience is the ability to judge right from wrong and the fortitude to take affirmative steps toward what one believes is right. It involves both conviction and action, often in the face of strong societal or institutional or corporate or family pressures to abstain from acting on your beliefs. Kelly says that the courageous conscience goes beyond acknowledging and correcting wrongs. It motivates us to make positive contributions. For example, championing a new idea in the face of strong institutional apathy or resistance. To have a courageous conscience is to have quitting issues. It's to be a person who's actively engaged in making your family, your community, your workplace a better place. And it's to be a person who is not willing to compromise your values or integrity just to keep a job, a relationship, or a comfortable place in life. A courageous conscience requires neither official sanction nor agreement from those in authority. In fact, it requires a measure of bravery, exactly because it requires us as individuals to risk and accept criticism or punishment for speaking up or speaking out. It is decidedly not about imposing your views on others. It is about being willing to pay a price to ensure that others hear what you believe, whether they accept your values or position or not. Like civil disobedience, it's effective precisely because you are willing to risk punishment, even if the risk is only perceived rather than real. Because it involves risk, to have a courageous conscience requires planning. You must have a family or financial support system that will allow you to get rid of the life that you planned when it would challenge your values or integrity to keep it. To live your life with integrity and a courageous conscience doesn't require you to undertake to do monumental acts or make big public statements, although, occasionally that might happen. Most of the time, you can act small in service of your values. Small acts can and do often have an unexpectedly big impact. You can choose simply to live and model your beliefs persistently every day, like my friend Jean Elliott, who was this year's Presidential Principles of Diversity Award winner here at Virginia Tech. You could be like the 8-year-old Ohio boy who found $20 in a parking lot, and instead of keeping it to play video games, he gave it to a soldier with this note written on a green Post-it. Dear soldier, my dad was a soldier. He's in heaven now. I found this $20 in the parking lot when we got here. We like to pay it forward in my family. It's your lucky day. Thank you for your service. Miles Eckert, a Gold Star kid. The soldier Miles gave the note to says he looks at it each day as he tries to live up to the boy's example. You could be like Will Portman, the son of a conservative senator, who proved once again that the most powerful political act that an LGBT person can take is simply to come out, to be authentically and completely exactly who they are, even if only to one person. After his son came out to him, Senator Portman said, as have so many others who know and love an LGBT person, I've had a change of heart based on personal experience. Or you could be like my friend Garth Callahan, now known as the Napkin Notes dad, and choose simply to try to make a difference in your own child's life. Garth began, without expectations or planning, to write notes when his daughter went off to kindergarten that he put in her lunch bag every day. And years later, he found out that she had been tearing the notes off the napkins and pasting them in a composition book, and that the notes had become an important part of her daily life. Now Garth is battling cancer for the third time. And the napkin notes have gone viral, helping his family with both financial and moral support at a difficult time. The napkin notes have gotten Garth a speaking slot at TEDx Richmond, something he confided to me was on his bucket list, and appearances on the Today Show and other network talk shows, and on Rachel Ray, where she gave him the gift of a family beach vacation that had been something he'd always wanted. Garth has now written 826 napkin notes, one note for his daughter, now 13, for every day she has left in school through grade 12. He wants to be sure that the notes are there in her lunch for her, even if he has to leave her before she leaves home. For my part, I try to follow the example set for me by my father, who served in the Army for 39 years. My father spoke out against segregated Army units at Fort Sill in the 50s. And in 1979, he won an award from the Federally Employed Women's Program for advancing women and minorities in the Defense Department. When he won the award, my father gave a keynote address that I often look back to for inspiration. He said in his speech that women and minorities in the Defense Department deserve to be accorded the full measure of their birthright in this great nation. He made clear that he thought it was imperative to do so not because it was the law, because it was the right thing to do. He said it's right that we take affirmative action now to assure equal opportunity for all those elements of society which have for too long been subject to discrimination in one form or another, personal or institutional, intentional or unintentional. My father believed that leaders are responsible for creating the environment in which positive change can occur. He said it's the duty of every manager and supervisor to do whatever can be done to encourage and support the fullest development of each individual's potential. When that's not done, he said, an injustice is committed, an injustice to the individual, an injustice to the institution, an injustice that's not an abstraction or a philosophical point, but one that is a moral and social injustice because we fail to perform right actions based on right principles. I don't think it's an accident of history that my father's last command was the first command in the Army to be headed by a woman four-star general, or that its current leader is one of the handful of African American men to achieve that rank. And that's where I want to leave you today. Thinking about what you might set in motion intentionally when you leave this place and begin to experience the life that's waiting for you. Prepare for change. Take Virginia Tech's principles of community with you. Guard your integrity. Build the foundation necessary to support a courageous conscience. Live your values out loud, and don't be afraid to act small. And as my friend Garth once wrote in a napkin note to his daughter, DFTBA, don't forget to be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castaneda, for your strong commitment to service. I now call upon Graduate Dean Dr. Karen DePaul.
Good afternoon. We would now like to observe a special award ceremony, and to do so, I would ask Dr. Tom Tiller, Vice President for Alumni Relations, to join me as we explain the significance. The success of a university is often best reflected in the accomplishments of its alumni. Together, the Graduate School and the Alumni Association have established the Graduate Alumni Achievement Award. And this is done to recognize graduate alumni who have achieved the highest goals in their field. I am pleased to announce that the 2014 recipient of the Graduate Alumni Achievement Award is Dr. John Grotzinger. Dr. Grotzinger, would you please come forward?
John P. Grotzinger is the Chief Scientist for NASA's Mars Science Laboratory mission and holds a chaired professorship at California Institute of Technology. In 1985, Dr. Grotzinger earned his doctorate in geological sciences from Virginia Tech and joined Columbia University in a postdoc position while working with the Geological Survey of Canada. A few years later, he joined the faculty at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he later held a chaired professorship before moving to Caltech. Dr. Grotzinger is a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science and has won more than 24 awards in recognition of his scientific accomplishments, most recently the Roy Chapman Andrews Explorer Award and the Charles Doolittle Walcott Medal, presented only once every 5 years by the National Academy of Science. NASA awarded him its Outstanding Public Leadership Medal. As chief scientist at NASA's Mars Science Mission Laboratory, he leads a team of 450 scientists in a $2.5 billion research program to study the planet Mars. He and his team developed the Curiosity rover, which has performed so well that Discover magazine listed it as #1 in its list of top 100 science stories of 2013, giving researchers unprecedented access to the red planet. Dr. Grotzinger, for your extraordinary achievements in your field, the Graduate School and the Virginia Tech Alumni Association are proud to present you with the 2014 Graduate Alumni Achievement Award.
I'll be brief. It's been a great journey. I'd like to thank my PhD advisors, Fred Reed and Ken Erickson, the Department of Geology, Geosciences. Virginia Tech was a wonderful place for me to study. My advice to y'all as you go forward is love what you do, never close out your options until you must, and for all the engineers, don't promise more than you can deliver. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting close. One of the greatest pleasures of being the graduate dean is to introduce the candidates for the graduate degrees. But before we do that, I would like you all here and in the audience to learn more about some of the accomplishments of our graduate students. Each and every student here does have a story to share of their experiences and activities during their graduate education. And no, we won't go through all of them. It would take too much time. Today, we wish to recognize and acknowledge many of you who have been an integral part of this very strong graduate community. Many of our graduate students qualify for and receive highly competitive fellowships and scholarships. So, this is the interactive part of, at least one part of our interactivity here. So please stand and remain standing if you have received a national or governmental fellowship. I know you're out there. Thank you. Okay. A foundation award or scholarship. Please keep standing. You don't get to sit down yet. So, a Virginia Tech fellowship or corporate scholarship. Please remain standing. And now, for the rest of you, please stand and be recognized as if you were selected for the Outstanding Master's or Doctoral student from your college, or if you have received a Graduate Teaching Assistant Excellence or Graduate Student Service Excellence Award, or the William Preston Society Master's Thesis, or any award provided by your department or college. Please remain standing, and please stand and be recognized if you have earned the distinction of being named a Citizen Scholar, a Diversity Scholar, if you were inducted into the Graduate Academic Leadership Honorary Society, AEL, or the Interdisciplinary Research Honor Society, Iota Delta Rho. And please stand if you have participated in the Graduate Student Assembly in any leadership role, were a delegate for your department, served on a university committee, participated in the Graduate Research Symposium, I know a lot of you did that, presented your work at a conference or participated in the many events or workshops sponsored by the Graduate School. Please stand if you have ever visited the nationally acclaimed Graduate Life Center, attended a workshop, symposium, or class there, used the computer lab, lived there, worked in the student lounge, worked in the reading room, visited the graduate school in Blacksburg or the National Capital Region, used the walk-in service, the plaza. By now, if you haven't figured it out, all of our graduate students should be standing because we acknowledge all that you've done. Thank you very much for all of your commitment to graduate education here, and one more round of applause for our graduate students. And now you may be seated. Each year, we select graduate students for special recognition. And this year, we have selected twins. And yes, they are actual twins. So I would ask Rebecca Ann Zeitz and Kimberly Ann Zeitz to stand and be recognized. They are both receiving master's degree in computer science. There they are. Congratulations. You may be seated. Many of the friends and families of today's graduates have sacrificed time and resources to help their loved ones attain the hard-won goal of a graduate degree. I would now like to share with you a few images of this past year that reflect some of the diversity, vitality, and the experiences of our graduate students. Please take a few minutes to enjoy the visual presentation, which is accompanied by an original composition by Virginia Tech Professor James Soginski, and it's played in honor of today's graduates by the Virginia Tech Brass Ensemble. The title is a paraphrasing of Invent the Future.
Well, now we're going to begin the conferral of degrees. The presentation of the doctoral degree is accompanied by a special tradition within academia. The doctoral degree recipients will be hooded by their major professors. The faculty member who accompanies the student to the stage is a member of the student's research committee and in most cases is the student's major doctoral advisor. That faculty member who mentored the student and most closely supervised his or her research. But by hooding the graduate today, the faculty member symbolically welcomes the graduate as a professional colleague, and this is a professional relationship and friendship that often continues throughout the graduates' and the mentors' lives.
Will all the candidates for the Doctor of Philosophy and the Doctor of Education degrees please rise? President Steger, I have the honor to present the candidates for the Doctor of Philosophy and the Doctor of Education degrees.
With the power vested in me by the Board of Visitors in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and upon the recommendation of the faculty, I confer upon you the Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Education degrees to which you are entitled with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto.
Will the marshals please escort the candidates for the doctoral degrees and their major professors to the stage for the hooding ceremony. Professor Joe Marola will be reading the names of the doctoral recipients and the hooding professors.
Receiving the Doctor of Philosophy from the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. In Agriculture and Extension Education, Jennifer Louise Helms, hooded by Professor Kim Nwolny. In Animal and Poultry Sciences, Joseph Carl Emmenheiser, hooded by Professor Scott Greiner. In Crops and Soil Environmental Sciences, Kiran Pavuluri, hooded by Professor Wade Thomason. In Economics in Agriculture and Life Sciences, Ranju Baral, hooded by Professor George Davis. Sapna Kau, hooded by Professor Kevin Boyle. Valeria Oshirov, hooded by Professor Klaus Meltner. In Entomology, Philip John Paul George, hooded by Professor Daniela Cimini. Timothy Augustus Jordan, hooded by Professor Douglas Pfeiffer. Mariam Kamali, hooded by Professor Loki Kok. Lisa Marie Moore, hooded by Professor Loki Koch. In food science and technology, Laurie Marie Bianchi, hooded by Professor Susan Duncan. Anibal Andres Concha Meyer, hooded by Professor Joseph Eifert. Margaret Ann Duxon, hooded by Professor Renee Boyer. In horticulture, Nan Lu, hooded by Professor Richard Vallieu. In human nutrition, foods, and exercise, Sarah Ann Mishak, hooded by Professor Elena Serrano. Elika Shabrok, hooded by Professor Madeline Friesard. In plant pathology, physiology, and weed science, Michael Christopher Cox, hooded by Professor Sean Askew. Adam N. Smith, hooded by Professor Sean Askew. Larissa Lynn Smith, hooded by Professor Jacob Barney. From the College of Architecture and Urban Studies in Architecture and Design Research, Lee A. Lally, hooded by Professor James Jones. In Environmental Design and Planning, Ali Abdullah M. Al-Basami, hooded by Professor Andrew McCoy. Sandeep Langar, hooded by Professor Annie Pierce. In Planning, Governance, and Globalization, Stephanie Florence Georgakis Abbott, hooded by Professor Yanis Stavakis. Eric Brandon Hodges, hooded by Professor Max Stevenson. Maheen Khan, hooded by Professor Karen Holt. In Public Administration and Public Affairs, Glenn Lydell Orr, hooded by Professor Larkin Dudley. From the Pamplin College of Business in Business Accounting, Eric Michael Nagengard, hooded by Professor Greg Jenkins. Gabriel D. Saucedo, hooded by Professor Jack Marr. In Business Finance, Debarati Bhattacharya, hooded by Professor Raman Kumar. In Business Marketing, Anne Marie Hamby, hooded by Professor David Brinberg. From the College of Engineering, in Aerospace Engineering, Craig Clayton Morris, hooded by Professor Joseph Schetz. Xiang Ren, hooded by Professor Gary Seidel. Anthony Pasquale Ricciardi, hooded by Professor Robert Canfield and Professor Mayuresh Patil. Eric C. Stewart, hooded by Professors Mayuresh Patil and Robert Canfield. In Biological Systems Engineering, Hadi Nazem Bokai, hooded by Professor Ryan Senger. Ji Guang Ju, hooded by Professor Yi Hong Zhang. In Biomedical Engineering, Venkata Siva Sai Sujit Saja, hooded by Professor Pamela Vandevoort. Nicholas Allen White, hooded by Professor Stefan Dumas. In Chemical Engineering, Christopher Robert Christie, hooded by Professor Chang Liu. Gregory Keith James, hooded by Professor John Walls. Shun Shi Ji, hooded by Professor John Walls. Naresh Pavarala, hooded by Professor Chang Liu. In Civil Engineering, Jordan Elisa Jarrett, hooded by Professor Finley Charney. Abira Batul, hooded by Professor Thomas Brandon. Bernardo Antonio Castellanos, hooded by Professor Thomas Brandon. Mohammed Saeed Degani Sanij, hooded by Professor Gerardo Flinch. Andrew B. Hardineck, hooded by Professor Finley Charney. Yue Ho, hooded by Professor Linbing Wang. Raj Kishore Kamalanath Sharma, hooded by Professor Hesham Raka. Yan Jun Ma, hooded by Professor Amy Pruden. Andrea Jean Tawari, hooded by Professor Lindsay Marr. Daniel Vanden Burge, hooded by Professor Michael Duncan and Professor Thomas Brandon. In computer engineering, Hyo Jun Bae, hooded by Professor Jeffrey Reed. Li Kwang She, hooded by Professor Thomas Ho. In computer science and applications, Stacy Marie Branham, hooded by Professor Steve Harrison. Promita Chakraborty, hooded by Professor Alexei Onufriev. Jun Suk Lee, hooded by Professor Deborah Tatar. Min Lee, hooded by Professor Ali Boot. Ruslan Nikolaev, hooded by Professor Godmar Back. Bharat Ramesh, hooded by Professor Cal Ribbons. Shweta Saundararajan, hooded by Professor James Arthur. In electrical engineering, Syed Amar Ahmad, hooded by Professor Jeffrey Reed. Noah Garcia Badallos, hooded by Professor Virgilio Centeno. Zhang Chen, hooded by Professor Virgilio Centeno. Zakaria Mahmoud Dalala, hooded by Professor Jason Lai. Dinesh Datta, hooded by Professor Jeffrey Reed. Hanif Lavani, hooded by Professor Johnson Evreno Solo. Ahmet Onen, hooded by Professor Robert Broadwater. Mohsen Salehi, hooded by Professor Majid Mantegi. In engineering education, Matthew Arnold Boynton, hooded by Professor Marie Peretti. In engineering mechanics, Fatima Bamani, hooded by Professor Mark Kramer. Saikat Basu, hooded by Professor Mark Stremler. Amir Ibrahim Bozorg Magam, hooded by Professor Shane Ross. Suvojit Ghosh, hooded by Professor Mohammed Haj. Leila Nazar Azadani, hooded by Professor Mark Stremler. Pradeep Chandrakant Rao, hooded by Professor Mark Stremler. In industrial and systems engineering, Na Mi, hooded by Professor Tanya Smith-Jackson. Victor Kaun Pareda, hooded by Professor Douglas Bish. Lee J. Wells, hooded by Professor Jaime Camillo. In Materials Science and Engineering, Laura Ann Patrick Smith, hooded by Professor William Reynolds. Ki Wei Xiao, hooded by Professor Kai Ngo. In Mechanical Engineering, Gaurav Agarwal, hooded by Professor Brian Latimer and Professor Srinath Ekad. Christopher Hawthorne Kane, hooded by Professor Alexander Leonessa. Surya D. Deb, hooded by Professor Danish Tafti. Jacob M. Delimont, hooded by Professor Srinath Ekad. Amelia McDowell Elliott, hooded by Professor Christopher Williams. Jeremy Joseph Kolansky, hooded by Professor Corina Sandhu. Jessica Ann May, hooded by Professor Michael Ellis. Andrew William Peterson, hooded by Professor Mehdi Ahmadian. Arnab Roy, hooded by Professor Srinath Ekad. Patrick Timothy Summers, hooded by Professor Brian Latimer. Casio Tomé de Faria, hooded by Professor Christopher Williams. Kamal Viswanath, hooded by Professor Christopher Williams. In Mining Engineering, Edmund Chimay Zhong, hooded by Professor Cray Luxbacher. From the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences in Apparel, Housing, and Resource Management, Luz Marena Samia, hooded by Professor Julia Beamish and Professor Virginia Riley. In Counselor Education, Jennifer Michelle Cook, hooded by Professor Gerard Lawson. Jasmine Jovanda Graham, hooded by Professor Laura Welfare. Carrie Brill Sanders, hooded by Professor Laura Welfare. Michelle G. Seibert, hooded by Professor Nancy Bodenhorn. In Curriculum and Instruction, Rebecca Lynn Brooke, hooded by Professor John Burton. Erin Gooding Cruz, hooded by Professors Carrie Redican and Kimberly Carter. Megan Elizabeth Evans, hooded by Professor Richard Stratton. Julaine M. Fowlin, hooded by Professor Catherine Sanamo. Hon Gui Lyon, hooded by Professor John Burton. Beth Loveday McDonald, hooded by Professor Jesse Wilkins. Jean May Mistel, hooded by Professor Jesse Wilkins. Kathy Marie Nichols Koch, hooded by Professor David Hicks. Titilola T. Obilade, hooded by Professor John Burton. Aveline Schilder, hooded by Professor Barbara Lockie. Terry Renee Wagner, hooded by Professor Catherine Sanamo. Yan Ju Wu, hooded by Professor Barbara Lockie. In Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, Maxwell Omondi Awando, hooded by Professor Stephen Janosic. Megan Armbruster Franklin, hooded by Professor Joan Hurt. Tricia Susan Jacobs, hooded by Professor Walt Mallory. Anne Margaret Laughlin, hooded by Professor Stephen Janosic. Michael Christopher McDonald, hooded by Professor Joan Hurt and Professor Stephen Janosic. James Scott Peterson, hooded by Professor Glenn Earthman. Marietta Elizabeth Poff, hooded by Professor Wayne Tripp. In Educational Research and Evaluation, Marlo Q. Lemons, hooded by Professor Gary Skaggs. In Human Development, Katie M. Barrow, hooded by Professor Catherine Allen. Kimberly Laura Day, hooded by Professor Cynthia Smith. William Glenn Langley Hollingsworth, hooded by Professor Megan Dolben McNabb. Ana L. Jaramillo Ciara, hooded by Professor Catherine Allen. Manjushri Palit, hooded by Professor Fred Piercy. In rhetoric and writing, Maggie Sami Saba, hooded by Professor Sheila Carter-Todd. In science and technology studies, Cora May Olson, hooded by Professor Saul Helfon. In social, political, ethical, and cultural thought, Seth James Barty, hooded by Professor Francois Debris and Professor Matthew Gabriel. From the College of Natural Resources in Forestry and Forest Products, Ram Thapa, hooded by Professor Harold Burkhart. In Geospatial and Environmental Analysis, Neelam Kayasta, hooded by Professor Valerie Thomas and Professor John Galbraith. Ioannis Kokonidis, hooded by Professor Steve Hodges. From the College of Science in Biological Sciences, Bianca Nicole Baker, hooded by Professor Li Wu Li. Xing Jing, hooded by Professor Florian Schubach. Sharmista Mitra, hooded by Professor Daniel Capiluto. Revathi Ramuchandran, hooded by Professor Ann Stevens. In chemistry, Jue Yang, hooded by Professor Judy Riffle. Mana Tamami, hooded by Professor Timothy Long. Wen Yu Zhang, hooded by Professor Webster Santos. Jiang Zhang, hooded by Professor Louis Madsen. In economics in the College of Science, Golnaz Tagvatalab, hooded by Professor Javad Salihi Isfahani. In geosciences, Pavithra Shaker, hooded by Professor Scott King. In mathematics, Adam Bowman, hooded by Professor George Hagedorn. Christopher Jarris, hooded by Professor George Hagedorn. Yu Ran, hooded by Professor Shuming Sun. In physics, Bartlett D. Edmonds, hooded by Professor Nahum Arav. Travis Robert Merritt, hooded by Professor Giti Kodaparast. Ziwei Zhou, hooded by Professor Randy Heflin. In psychology, Amanda J. Watson, hooded by Professor Martha Ann Bell. In statistics, Mark Seiss, hooded by Professor Eric Vance. Jonathan W. Stallings, hooded by Professor J.P. Morgan. Ning Wang, hooded by Professor Marion Reynolds. In the category of interdisciplinary doctoral degrees, in genetics, bioinformatics, and computational biology, Shernita Lene Lee, hooded by Professor Reinhard Laubenbacher. In macromolecular science and engineering, Uz Han Chelebi, hooded by Professor Judy Riffle. Sidesh Nitin Pawar, hooded by Professor Kevin Edgar. Hunia M. Pareda, hooded by Professor Kevin Edgar. From the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences, receiving the Doctor of Education in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, Jacqueline C. Kopaj Miller, hooded by Professor Carol Cash. Deborah Anita Hunley Stooks, hooded by Professor Carol Cash. Angela Lake Isbell, hooded by Professor Carol Cash. Travis Marion Nichols, hooded by Professor David Parks. Dana Burton Norman, hooded by Professor Glenn Earthman. Lisa A. Pluska, hooded by Professor Glenn Earthman. John Francis Wheeler, hooded by Professor Glenn Earthman. Cynthia Chrisman Williams, hooded by Professor Glenn Earthman.
Yes, and congratulations to all of our new doctoral recipients. Before we announce the master's candidates, I would like to acknowledge those students who have earned a postmaster's education specialist degree and those who have earned a graduate certificate. So if you have earned the education specialist degree or a grad certificate, please stand so we can acknowledge your efforts. Congratulations. You may be seated. We will recognize students who have earned a master's degree from among the 89 different master's programs offered at Virginia Tech. Will all the candidates for the master's degree please rise? President Steger, I have the honor to present the candidates for the master's degree.
With the power vested in me by the Board of Visitors in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and upon the recommendation of the faculty, I confer upon you the master's degrees to which you are entitled, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto.
You may be seated. At this time, Professor Marola will read the names of the master's degree candidates as the marshals present the escorts to the stage.
We need to get a backlog before I start. Receiving the Education Specialist degree in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, Tressa Kemage. From the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, receiving the Masters of Science in Agriculture and Applied Economics, Angel Campoverde. Receiving the Master of Science in Agriculture and Life Sciences, Tami Amal. Kayla Anglin. Ryan Tips, receiving the Master of Science in Animal and Poultry Sciences, Ming Shi. Laura Nelson. Deidre Harmon, receiving the Masters of Science in Crop, Soil, and Environmental Sciences, Swan Chi Yu. Receiving the Master of Science in Dairy Science, Lindsay Caudle. Receiving the Masters of Life Sciences in Entomology, Jacob Bova. Brittany DeLong. Molly Steadfast, receiving the Masters of Life Sciences in Food Science and Technology, Jason Levy. Receiving the Masters of Science in Human Nutrition, Food, and Exercise, Carissa Greer. Grace Wilburn. From the College of Architecture and Urban Studies, receiving the Master of Architecture, Mohammed El-Zamzami. Eric Einstein. Sibi Ohume. Camila Paji. Hadiya Ashtiani. Christina McMillan. Joshua Wilson. Michael Rollins. Mark Rebholz. Reza Musa Najad. Shi Sheen. Receiving the Master of Science in Building Construction Science and Management, Justin Newsom. Receiving the Master of Public Administration, Henry Samuel Earl IV. Danielle Progan. Matthew Banfield. Valerie Mitchell. Alex Baruch, receiving the Master of Urban and Regional Planning, Daniel Mesple. Dak Tien No. Kristen Rader. Graham Owen. Jacqueline Pontius. Kathleen Oldry. George Ventura Ovales. Armand Bryant. Na Gao. Rong Grong Wei, from the Pamplin College of Business, receiving the Master of Accounting and Information Systems, Kathleen Peak. Jonathan Pavlik. Logan Booth. Brian Pendleton. Arun Sunduram. Garrison Clark. Hei Sung Yoon. Ho Jung Yoon. Emily Gift. Devin Wang. Ronald Neely. Joseph Surma. Travis Tucker. Lee Ji. Huan Lai. Zhang Yu Gao. Dan Ho. Zejing Wu. Yu Zhang. Stephanie Carroll. Elizabeth Hone. Julia Hoffman. Laura Davis. Chantal Francis. Morgan Curry. Valerie Pagani. Mary Beats. Jennifer Wade. Adrienne Taylor. Kelly Shields. Meredith Bell. Taylor Rabulli. Kevin Riggy. Matthew Welsh. Michael Schrin. Morgan Bedsworth. Shama Herman. Amina Aziz. Erica Kaiser. Lauren Spittle. John Knizik. Angela King. receiving the Master of Business Administration, Robert Rich. Gio Medalago. Charlotte Trevison. Jonas Wenger. Carlene Perrin. Vittoria Piazzoli. Keenan Mukarzal. Pablo Cardenas Orlandini. Simranjit Singh. Ershad Shebani. Se Panigruli. Naresh Kumar. Darshana Mali. Kunal Badia. Radhya Nimalapali. Swathi Nekanti. Christian Langston. John Sima. Pamela Ray. Justin Newsom. Joseph Racer. Gunji Jung. Chung Yang Xiao. Michael Hollingshead. Yushan Pan. David Pursley. Edward Halley. Philip Garreau. Alexander Ziegler. David Maroney. Matthew Jordan. Xiao Lin Chong. Ji Zhu. Dan Dan Zhang. Yu Pan. Yi Fan Lin. Jing Jing Shu. Ken Atavatko. Beshad Gadimi. Irene John. Hervé Fehrenbach. Tiffany Going. Jessica Lauterbach. Akina Osuji. Alfred Titus Glover. Maika Nguyenno. Karim Ioannis. Brian Ledwith. Ali Al-Salim. Receiving the Master of Science in Hospitality and Tourism Management, Tyler Carwell. Mallory Taylor. Ya Liu. Chuhan Wang. Michelle O'Brien. From the College of Engineering, receiving the Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering, Donald Brooks. Michael Nelson. Brent Michalowski. Patrick Smith. Lizelle Joseph. Ryan Capps. Stephen Portner. Receiving the Master of Science in Biological Systems Engineering, Emily Bach. Lori Willard. Christine Bronnenkamp. David McCann. Jun Yen. Receiving the Master of Science in Biomedical Engineering, John Scanlon. Yvonne Empson. Receiving the Master of Science in Civil Engineering, Valerie Black. Aaron Fortier. Akma Vangelnorov. Ryan Klein. Edmund Mueller. Ethan Hill. Akram Sublaban. Jack Richardson. Christopher Ott. Nicole Abramson. Kelsey Brandt. Carlos Mantilla Peña. Nicholas Taylor. Bardia Haidari. Piyush Kari. Davide Pu. Aswin Ganam. Ankit Patak. Michael Hollingshead. Benjamin Zolman. Olivia Herrera. Edward Halley. Karim Ioannis. Aruna Mutamanikom. Benjamin Chambers. Patanan Chanpiwat. Oscar Delgado. Shiwen Lee. Aaron Phillips. Jana Bonfilio. Nicholas Waugh. Juan Para Acosta. Youssef Hamami. Janli Chen. Jingyao Li. Ting Zhu. Xia Yao Wang. Receiving the Master of Science and Master of Engineering in Computer Engineering, Dilip Venkataswaran Murali, Lakshman Swarup Babu, Shuchi Pundit, Harich Balasubramanian, Rashmi Maudgil, Ramakrishna Vijanapali Chakri, Vivek Gopal, Hetaswi Vankani, Arijit Chattopadhyay, Frank Albert, Robert Lyerly, Ryan Jobsey, receiving the Master of Science in Computer Science and Applications, Anand Swaminathan, Tirtha Bhuttacharjee, Sushrut Shirole, Shruti Iyer, Brian Bowden, Aditya Doki, Krunal Doshi, Soni Vijay, Monica Monk, Kimberly Zaitz, Rebecca Zaitz, receiving the Master of Science and Master of Engineering in Electrical Engineering, Avik Dayal, Anibal Sanjab, Gerald Warchol, William Faraci, Christina DiMarino, Philip Lane, Ishan Shah, Andrew Amrine, receiving the Master of Science in Engineering Mechanics, Nima Rosa Barsalo Pacheco, Ian Marcus, Callan Gillespie, Eric McDowell, Winston Becker, receiving the Master of Science in Environmental Engineering, Rachel Solero, Catherine Petsompu, Andrew Freitas, Jacqueline DePriest, David Fierro, Shekhar Sharma, receiving the Master of Science in Industrial Systems Engineering, Juan Folgar Lopez, Mohammed Rasim Farouk, Nirmit Gandhi, Irene John, Ikena Osuji, Alfred Titus Glover, Zachary Clement, Ting Ting Huang, Nan Ji, receiving the Master of Science in Materials Science and Engineering, Yangchuan Liang, Carlos Casedas, receiving the Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering, Ryan Brown, Rudy Andriani, Alan Kirchhoff, Robert Burgess, Jonathan Hardwick, Joseph Quadrado, Rebecca Ann Bandy, Joshua Melson, LaTonya Scott, Earl Campaign, Shayar Taheri, Srikant Vabator Shivarama, Venkata Ravishankar Kasibotla, Deepu Dilip, Sakshi Jain, Jayati Atavali, Adam Cho, Peter Manning, Eli White, Todd Pickering, receiving the Master of Science in Ocean Engineering, Matthew Rionde, Eric Velez. From the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences, receiving the Master of Arts in Education in Career and Technical Education, Kyle Donovan. Baxter Helmick, Casey Kilcoyne, Kelsey Johnson, Shasta Sowers, Caitlin Givens, Ashley Ulmer, Morgan Holder, Christopher Silvestri, Charles Knight, Mark Robertson, receiving the Master of Arts in Education in Counselor Education, Catherine Bianco, Christine Lavin, Douglas Warford, Alexandra Ward, Courtney Canterbury, Paulina Peña, Christina Arbusias, Jacqueline McMillan, Erica Baker, Margaret Long, Catherine Shreve, Andrew Barrett, receiving the Master of Arts in Education in Curriculum and Instruction, Corissa Wilson, Jeremy Riggs, Kylie Ford, Whitney Powell, Matthew Libwit, Megan Willis, Sarah Deal, Eric Hagler, Luke Tonya, Billy Hutchings, Amanda DiMasso, Michael Zaleski, Jesse Harver, Kelly Marlowe, Catherine Estes, Monica Rodden, Courtney Hill, Brooke King, Andrew Cundiff, Rebecca Miller, Emily White, Robert Glasson, Brett Buckner, Sylvia Marshall, Shabnam Kavusi, Stefan Munz, Benjamin Jesse, Kristen Fowler, Sarah Edwards, Jenna George, Candace Flake, Kathleen Gatesley, Carolyn McKenzie, Claire Vogler, Marla Schretner, Mary Moyer, Kim Bates, Vanna Hemler, Alexis Mancisador, Paige Urban, Melanie Marie French, Olivia Hale, Zhao Chen, Hanin Almania, Ashwak Al-Zarani, Ryan Borden, Benjamin Spires, Robert Atkinson, Michael Smith, Corinne Sapuseris, Genevieve Gelati, Tyler Ogden, Catherine Dunsmore, John J. Miller, Brandon Weaver, Ansis Nudiens, James Berry, Brett Shurfee, Julie Aurora, Brett Brooks, Catherine Harbula, Barry Potter, Whitney Bayton, Stephanie Carr, Emily Daniels, Daisy Bills, Catherine Schonk, Sarah DeVito, Bradley Taylor, Andrea Wall. Sean Savage. Daniel Smith. Garrett Baltzer. Sarah Pratt. Stacy Jones. Rhonda Hicks. Melissa Sinclair. Rebecca Stiltner. Christy James. Janet Stevens. Allison Dunkley. April Catron. Tara Gallagher. Brianna Thomas. Caitlin Schmidt. Jessica Pittman. Alexandra King. Sarah Hale. Kaylin Daniels. Crystal Reed. Dagmar Wobble. Hannah Huang. Allison Hughes. Jamie Moran. Elvira Dimas. Carly Arsenault. Morgan Hicks. Britton Orr. Victoria McKissick. Ashlyn Jones. Victoria Foster, receiving the Master of Arts in English, Ingrid Baker. Andrew Kulak. William Bebout. Sanglin Lee, receiving the Master of Arts in Foreign Languages, Cultures, and Literatures, Doreen Ciccarello. Receiving a Master of Arts in Higher Education, Justin Graves. Sam Gavick. Nick Warrington. Shannon Farquhar Cadell. Kelsey Gamble. Katie Gordon. Jennifer Ann Hanratty. Mark Smiley. Mitchell Holston Jr. Reginald Strobel. Receiving the Master of Arts in History, Tyler Bergeron. Allison Height. Jordan Hill. Receiving the Master of Arts in Philosophy, Nicole Jin. Ryan Ferguson. Receiving the Master of Arts in Political Science, Mark Gordon. Lauren Joyce. Receiving the Master of Science in Science and Technology Studies, Brian Whiteley. Receiving the Master of Science in Sociology, Dominique Bunay. From the College of Natural Resources, receiving the Master of Science and Master of Forestry and Forest Products, Christopher Beagley. Milad Mohammed Zadeh. Oksana Brene Sangulo. Melissa Brenes Bastos. Receiving the Master of Science and Master of Forestry in Forestry, E.J. Wu. Clara DeYoung. Pamela Braff. Receiving the Master of Science in Geography, Daniel Sumner. Paul Miller. Catherine Howie. Receiving the Master of Natural Resources, Natalie Graham. Dak Tien No. Kristen Rader. From the College of Science, receiving the Master of Science in Chemistry, Amrapali Dengada. Receiving a Master of Arts in Economics, Zebulon Riley. Thorsten Matji. Receiving the Master of Science in Geosciences, David Mercier. Receiving the Master of Science in Mathematics, Christopher Gartland. Receiving the Master of Science in Physics, Wolfgang Troth. Receiving the Master of Science in Statistics, Emmanuel Misemo. Receiving the Master of Science in Biomedical and Veterinary Sciences, Sarah Casey. Tiffany Russian. Receiving the Master of Public Health, Monica Motley. Alice Hauk. Cecily Haynes. Brittany Ralph. Bradley Howard. Penelope Mulliner. Yara Emil Haddad. Chani Jane. Sarah Wolford. Kimberly Schrader. Shannon Sampson. Emily Eskew. Betty Rose. Kimberly Ward. Kelsey O'Hara. Anna Gustafsson Faustnacht. Chantal Hover. Stephanie Crawford. Lauren Long. Sarah Beth Dodson. Francis Amankwa. From interdisciplinary degree programs, receiving the Master of Information Technology, Clinton Berry. Netta Alexander. Andrea Johnston. Ran Chu. Tenora Green. Dan Liu. Matthew Williams. Mark Hollingshead. Receiving a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering, Ahmad Tabali. And receiving the Master of Business Administration, Christopher Karumba.
Well, congratulations to all of our new master's degree holders, education specialists, grad certificates, and doctoral degree recipients today. Congratulations once more.
Well, as a final note, I'd like to call upon Dr. Joseph Marola, President of the Faculty Senate, to bring a brief message from the faculty. Dr. Marola did a great job on the names.
Thank you. For the next few seconds, I have the privilege of not only being a professor of chemistry, but through some New Age channeling mysticism, I get to be all faculty. Now, over the last number of years, as all faculty, we have already had a lot of words together, probably hundreds and thousands of hours of words. But I just want to leave you with two words that I don't think we've said to you enough, and that's thank you. It's thank you, but because of you, Virginia Tech is one of the top universities in the nation and in the world. It's because of you. It's because of you that I have my job, that I have my promotions, that I get great recognition in the papers that I write, that you did the work for. So I just want to say thank you. And as you leave, while you've been spending the last several years inventing the future, and you will continue to invent the future, don't forget to be the future, and be a good one.
Again, I want to thank Dr. Marola for reading the names, and to Ms. Rebecca Wiles and the members of the Virginia Tech Brass Ensemble for their part in this afternoon's ceremony. Now I'd invite you all to stand until the stage party has recessed. With the recessional, our ceremony will be concluded. Thank you all for joining us, and have a safe trip home.